You've got some vacation time. You and your girlfriend, too bad mind. Bad when you both combine. I don't know why you look so nice. Girl, you're not nice, you're rude. Want me to feel like I'm new. Want me to watch you do. Don't get you look so nice, being not nice, you're rude. Look what you putting me through. I never do this to you. I need to hold a corner, and it's no wine. One time, I need to hold a corner, and it's no wine. One time, I need to.
Hi everyone, welcome back for the afternoon session of the Leadership Summit. So we're going to proceed with the Code of Conduct again. You could scan this to read or review our Code of Conduct. Then we'll have more like an address, and we'll look at a story about Anansi and the python. Anansi is more of a West African folklore or mythology. So that will be given by Jay, and then we proceed with the keynote address.
That was actually now. So we can do that now. We can do that now.
Yes.
That way we keep going. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead and do the other stuff that was on.
Okay, so photos are encouraged, but please ask first. Make sure that the person you are taking a photo of doesn't have a red dot on the badge. Also, we have a health and safety policy. There are masks out there on the table, so if you want a mask, please go and get a mask. There are restrooms at the end of the hall when you go out there. There are unisex, and then there's also male and female. So feel free to use which one is good for you. If you have any questions or concerns, please let us know. And there's also a Jungle Girls event downstairs.
Upstairs, my bad.
Sorry, upstairs.
Blame me for any slides.
Yeah.
We thought we were going to be upstairs, and then we swapped last minute.
Mm-hmm. So for the afternoon track, we have the 1 p.m. welcome and opening remarks, 1:15 a keynote address by Wesley, 2:05 we have interactive sessions, and 3 o'clock we have a panel discussion, 4 p.m. breakout sessions, 5:15 breakout sessions recap, 5:45 closing remarks, and then 6 to 7:30 we have happy hour on the rooftop. So we'd like to say thank you again to our sponsors, Defna, PSF, Cactus, and yes.
Before you get up,
Mm-hmm.
we had a thing that I forgot that we were doing. I'm just going to stand up next to I'll be really quick, or I can just hold this. This is fine too. Yeah. Okay, so as y'all know, like some of you may know, Black Python Devs is a community that has a very worldwide focus towards it. And a large part of our community, arguably the largest part of our community, hails from Western Africa. They have just jumped into the community, started contributing at the highest levels, and it's fantastic. And that's not to say anything about the other portions of our community. It just happened to be the way that it was, that I was on YouTube one day and I bumped into this story about Anansi, the spider who wanted all the wisdom in the world. And I was like, okay, cool. And from there, I was like, all right, let me just hear this out. And as I started talking about this story, apparently Anansi is this character that goes back through, it's I almost think of it as Aesop's fables for folks in the South, if you're familiar with those, or stories that we're often told in childhood that usually aim to teach a lesson or aim to scare little kids into behaving. These are always the things that we try to do. But in this story, Anansi the spider goes to the sky god and says, I want all of the wisdom in the world. And the sky god tells them, I will give you all the wisdom in the world if you can do these 3 things. And we're only going to talk about the first thing that you can do. So I need you to capture 3 animals and bring them to me. One of those animals was a tiger. One of them was a nest of wasps or bees. And the other one was a python. So we're going to skip the stories about the other animals. They're not that important. So the story with the python, Anansi is trying to figure out, how do I capture this python? It's super cunning, it's fast, super reflexes. I don't want to die. I'm just a spider. And he comes up with this idea where he grabs a really long branch. And he goes to the spider and he goes, hey, spider, I need you to help settle this argument that I'm having with my wife. I think that you're longer than this branch. In fact, I think you're one of the longest animals in the world. And she said you're not longer than this branch. So can you please just measure yourself up against the branch to just make sure that I'm right and, my wife is wrong. And the spider is the python is I could probably do that. And as he tries to lay down next to the branch, his tail keeps curling up. And it's I can't can't seem to get there. He's like, hey, if you're not long enough, it's okay. Like, we're not trying to measure up to anything, but like, if you're telling me that you're not longer than this branch, I'll just have to eat crow and tell my wife that she was right. And it's like, or maybe if you get closer here, I'll help you and I'll tie your tail down. So the python agrees and gets next to the branch, lays its tail down, and Anansi begins to tie the tail down. But before the python can do anything else, Anansi then wraps the python around the branch, picks up the python, and carries him to the sky god. So what's the moral of this story? Well, with a little bit of cunning and maybe the good use of, tailing your logs, you can probably master Python and gain all the knowledge in the world. And with that said, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, whose bio I did not include on my slides, Wesley Faulkner.
All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. It's really an honor to be here. I wanted to make sure to say thank you, Jay, for the invitation to be here. It's truly an honor to be here in this group and being able to speak to peers and other industry experts that are here who would like to celebrate technology. I'm barely shown here, but it's okay. It's fine. You can see my slides, right? Okay. For those who don't know me, my name is Wesley Faulkner. I have a few years of experience both in the hardware side of technology. I was a server storage tech for 6 years. I was a product development engineer for 5.5 years. I was in technical marketing for over a decade. And the last 6 years, I've been in developer relations. And basically, I've done everything on the hardware side, software side, from the community side to the planning and the product management side of technology. So I've seen every part of tech, how you put it together, how it works in the field, and the feedback, and making sure that we do the iterative process of making sure technology works. And so I've had a lot of career, 25 years, in fact, of technical experience. Of my 25-year career, I have not once been a manager. I also have never worked for a manager who is black. And my experience is not rare, which makes me sad. And so let's start off with a question that I would like for everyone to think about. What is your plan for success? Is your plan to run your own company? Is your plan to be on the executive board of a company? Do you want to make a large impact in the industry? Currently speaking, if someone asked you today and you had to have that answer, what's in your mind of how you were going to end your career? Go ahead, seriously, take a second, think about it. All right, let's go over some statistics. Hold your answer in your mind. I'm not going to ask you to shout it out or anything, so no awkward moments here. So let's move forward with just some numbers, because numbers are our friends. This is a very US-centric, but let's talk about the percentage that we're working with for here in the United States. The United States is mostly made of people who are white. There is 58.9% people in the US population who identify as white. Of those, employed in the tech sector is 62.5%. 62.5% of everyone in tech is white. When you look at tech executives, people who are at the top of the industry, 83.3% are white. Now, if there's a nice little graphic here as well, and you can see the bar go up, right? So if you are a white person in tech, the odds get increasingly better for you to do fairly well. Some of these statistics may seem surprising. Is anyone here in the room surprised by these numbers? No? You knew this? Okay. So as you can see, if you just look at one thread, not, of course, this is a very complicated topic, it seems like at least the odds seem very good, at least increasingly so. Now, what do you think is going to be on the next slide? All right, here are the numbers. Of the US population, 12.6% are black. Of those in the tech sphere, only 7.4% are represented in tech. And if you even compare to other industries, tech versus other professions, you can see that it's nearly double in other professions other than technology. And when we talk about leadership roles, people who are executive in tech, and look at those numbers, it goes all the way down to 3%. So instead of a bar graph marching up, you can see it gets increasingly harder as you want to advance in the profession if you're in technology. I kind of knew this, but until I looked up the statistics, I didn't know how dire it was, and it was extremely sad and scary. So I had my own definition of like what success looks like at the end of my career. I figured that I would just, with my experience, with my leadership skills, that I would be moving forward. That has not been the case, unfortunately, but in some ways, it hasn't been as limiting as you might think. Let's go over some definitions between leadership and management, because those are not the same. Management can be defined as a process of administrating and controlling the affairs of the organization, irrespective of its nature, type, structure, and size. It's an act of creating and maintaining such a business environment wherein the members of the organization can work together and achieve business objectives efficiently and effectively. Now, what is leadership? Leadership is defined by the ability to create a vision and influence, motivate, and inspire, and transform others to achieve certain goals towards that vision. That's known as leadership. Leadership is the specific set of skills and attributes which can be acquired through learning. Crystal clear? If you remember nothing from the rest of this presentation, I want you to remember this translation. Management is something that is given to you. Leadership is something that you practice. So if you look at those charts from before, if you're black in tech in the US, you can see most likely leadership is going to be like buy a lottery ticket. The odds are not in your favor. But that does not mean that it needs to stop you from your dreams. It doesn't need to stunt you in what you consider is success. You can lean on leadership to get still forward in your practice, to get deeper in your knowledge, and to achieve your goals. Once again, if you can remember anything else, management is something that is given to you. Leadership is something that you can practice, so it doesn't really matter if you're given that title, that role, it's something you yourself can move forward on. I like to use that to reintroduce myself. So my accomplishments are numerous, but this is just a few. I keynoted Developer Relations Conference in London last year in October. I was a featured speaker at South by Southwest this past March. I am one of the 5 steering committee members for the Developer Relation Foundation, or DevRel Foundation. I'm also the podcast co-host for 2 podcasts. One is Community Pulse, which focuses on community and developer relations. The other is Radical Respect, which focuses on leadership and building an equitable work environment. My co-host for that podcast is the New York Times bestseller author, Kim Scott, who wrote Radical Candor. And so she is an industry titan, and none of this stuff was based on me being a manager, me having a title. It was based on me being a leader. People who sought me out, people who recognize the work that I have done outside of my job description, outside of my role, or the impact I've made on community as a whole, that has seen me as a leader. And those leadership qualities is kind of what has brought me here, even to this keynote. So add this to the list after this talk. Okay? And so I don't feel stunted by not having that title, at least not in my life. And I've been able to accomplish some things that I feel truly proud of, and I do not feel that this has stopped and that it will keep going, because it is a train that I feel like I'm in control because I know I have the power. All right, I like to do things in 3s, like my friend in the audience. And so let's go over some keys to leadership. So the first one is observation. So when you're in your position, it doesn't matter if it's a work position, if it's a board position, if it's a volunteer position, or even in a family dynamic, what you need to do is listen to what people say and watch what people do. Oftentimes, those are different. Companies will make an announcement, but then they will make a change. The question is, are you able to observe to the point where you can do the translation in your head to really understand what they're saying and what that actually means? So decoding the language of the environments that you're in is the first key to leadership. If you are in a place when you want to make sense of things, this is the roadmap to do that. To start by observing, because if you stop listening, if you delete the company-wide newsletter and just don't even read it, if you don't show up to the town halls, if you don't listen to all of the memos and the interviews with the people of leadership, if you ignore all that, then you're missing a huge piece of it. If you aren't listening to the side conversations, if you're not seeing the press releases, those are all things that you should start to tune into, to observe, to really understand the messaging that they're trying to put out there and the moves that they're making. That's the first step. The second step is to predict. If you do this enough times that you can see that A turns into B, B turns into C, C turns into D, you can start to predict. You see an announcement here, you're like, oh, I bet this means a reorg over here, or this means that we're gonna have a leadership change over here, or we're gonna be hiring, or we're gonna be freezing hiring, or there are gonna be layoffs. Will it be a stock dividend? Will there not be a stock dividend? Are we going public, or are we looking for more funding? You'll start to notice the patterns, and then you'll, in your mind, be able to predict those. You'll be able to see where things are going. If observation was the what, predicting is the when. So you'll know when things will happen, not just what will happen. So If you do step number one, number two should be fairly easy most of the time, okay? All right, and this is the last step. Improve. We've all been there when you're wondering, that's not how I would have done it. That's not the way I would have done it. That's not how quickly I would have done it. Or that's not how slowly I would have done it. Or this is something that doesn't make sense to me. I wish they did the work to make sure that makes sense to everyone else. I wish they made sure that everyone was on board. I wish they got my feedback. These are knee-jerk questions and reactions. But the question is, what are you comparing them to? Are you comparing to your own experience? Are you comparing to the experience of your coworkers? Are you comparing it to the experience that you've seen from previous companies you've been at? This is the work part. Remember, leadership is learning. And this is the part where you put the learning to work. And if you don't have the learning, you find it and you use it. What are the best practices? What are the industry standards? What do successful companies do? What do successful organizations do? What do successful leaders do? Do your reading. Do your research. Look at white papers. Look at releases. Look at Harvard Business Journal like reports and studies and journals and everything. Read the books, listen to the podcasts, Google search everything. So when you have an inkling of opinion of how you would have done it better, back it up. Find the data, find the information, find the references. So this is the part where most of your learning will come from. This is the rinse and repeat part, okay? You're gonna keep getting better, and you're gonna keep getting better based on your standard and based on what you are observing. So now, instead of just having an opinion, when you hear something, you know what's gonna happen, you know when it's gonna happen, you know how they're gonna screw it up, and you know how you could have done it better. I think there's a saying here like Sunday night quarterbacking, where someone says, oh, why did they make that pass, or why did they run that play? There's probably reasons for it. The question is, can you do it better? And the only way that you know you can is if you do this step. You can think you can, but this way you know you can, okay? Of course, there'll be things that you don't know. There'll be information you don't have. But you can make inference saying, well, if they had this information, they would have done it this way. So these are the three things. And if you do those, you'll be a really great leader. Then once you have those steps down, and it's a practice, you'll keep doing them over and over again, you're gonna notice some changes. And this is the signs that you're gonna know that you're doing it right. Once again, this is in threes. So the first one is your mindset. So your mindset is first to dissect and discriminate and to question rather than to complain. You'd be like, that was an interesting move. I wonder what that means. I wonder what's going on, right? So your whole mindset, your default, will move into this cycle of understanding, where you try to fill in the blanks, you try to make sense of the situation. So instead of sometimes you hear, if in the past where you might have panicked when you see a press release, or you might have spiraled and saying like, what does this mean for me? You'll be thinking more about the organization. You'll be thinking about the business. You'll be thinking of the macroeconomics of the world and the industry and in tech. You'll grow to a place where it's more than just you, it's more about us, and it's more about them. It's gonna be something that's gonna make you feel less alone. So pulling in your mindset doesn't make you someone who's subjected to just these decisions, but it's gonna be in a way, you're kind of in the room hearing it with everyone else and being able to think and put yourself in the mind of the decision makers. Next is the following. This is another sign that your transformation into a leader is happening. When you can start making sense of this, people are going to start asking you questions. So what do you think they're doing? So what's next? what's going to happen? When do you think this will happen? And then instead of you being one of the people who are complaining, you'll be like, it'll be okay in a couple weeks. Or don't worry, that means that they're on their way out. You'll be able to answer questions for people that don't have access to the people in the room. You will now be kind of a default representative to people. You'll be able to counsel them. You'll be able to help them plan. You'll be able to make sure that they are okay. And that's going to lean on your leadership skills. And this is part of the indoctrination, and you'll know this will happen. And some of you in this room are already experiencing this. And you were doing some of the things already, and now you're seeing that this stuff is just happening. People have identified you as a leader because they see that you have a calmness, they'll see you have understanding, and you'll see you have a practice of not just spouting off, well, this is what I feel like. You can say, well, I've read this, and I've seen this, and then this is also happening here. You'll be able to not just connect the dots, but be able to relay those back out. And so you'll start having people talking to you and confiding in you. And the last is that you'll feel enlightened. You won't, and this is a good thing and a bad thing. Sometimes you will say, yeah, they are idiots. That MBA is not working for them. That decision does not make any sense. That decision is going to hurt the business. That decision is going to kill this project. That decision is going to come back and beat us in the butt in like 7 months or a year. Your predictability, your understanding, your general kind of absorption of the general atmosphere of the company and the industry will allow you to feel like, I do know what's going on. I don't have imposter syndrome. They are screwing with me. They're screwing with everyone. They are telling lies, or they're telling the truth, or they're scared themselves and they're trying to cover it up. You'll start to see these things that you might have taken for granted. And then you'll also learn that sometimes someone might have the title of manager, but they may not have the ability as a leader. And that will also show those do not mean the same thing. So it's a curse of knowledge that you won't be able to unlearn. So be warned if you go down this path. All right. There are some burnout, there's some risk and some bad sides to leadership as well, and so I wanted to touch on these. Your mental health will be affected, and possibly you're a higher risk of burnout. This is because of having that knowledge. You can get frustrated with leadership. You can get frustrated with the way the industry is going. Also, you can also feel like you can do more at work. If you can predict things, then you know, like, okay, well, I'm going to put this test case in here because I see that this is probably going to be an issue. Or I'm going to design it in this way because I know they're going to ask for it anyway. They're not asking for it now, but when they get to the point, I'm going to make sure that it's set in a way that I can go ahead and just slide this function in. Or, like, I'm going to make sure that I raise my hand to speak at this meeting because I know this executive only pays attention to the people who speak in this meeting. Or I need to start doing this project because that's the only path to this kind of promotion, or to make sure that I get the funding that I need. You'll see the moves that you can make, and most of the times you will do the moves that you are able to make because you are able to see clearer, which means you could work more, which means that you can burn out. So, cautious tale. If you become a leader, really, really check your mental health and make sure you stay on top of that. Next, your communication skills become more important. This is both communicating to your colleagues and people laterally, but also communicating up and managing up. As you have these insights, you might be, I don't know, urged to tell the person behind the wheel that they're heading towards a cliff. You might be able to tell them that if you move just a little bit to the right, we can actually hit more of this goal that you think that you need. You can help with leading people who are in management. And that means a certain type of phrasing, a certain type of approach, which you need to make sure that you don't feel threatening to them. Oh no, you're trying to take my job, or oh no, you're gonna know that I'm a fraud and so I'm gonna get rid of you. Those are things that have happened and still can happen. So managing up, managing laterally, and actually managing outside the organization is something that is gonna be extremely important. So if you struggle in your interpersonal communication style or skills, that's something you're gonna have to shore up because the impact can be, it can ripple from depending on where you start. Because you are seen as a leader, your voice actually matters more and it carries more weight and it will carry further. So make sure that you stay close to your core in terms of your value system. You're gonna make sure that you aren't contradictory, you aren't manipulative, that you actually are doing things that show that if anyone recorded it or replayed it back to you, that you can stand behind. So your moral structure is really key to that as well, so make sure you do that. And work may take up more of your time. If you're doing this reading, if you're doing this learning, you're building in mechanisms to keep that going, right? But you need to do that for the rest of your life and the rest of the things that you carry with you. Your family life, your hobbies, entertainment, if you want to watch your TV shows on a certain, make sure you keep that up. One thing is also you can't, when going back to your answer and your question about success, you can't be just focused on success in your career. You want to be a successful person, a successful dad, a successful partner. You want to make sure that you're successful in all the different cases. You want to be successful at relaxing, because that's something that you're also going to need to start to master. One thing that I've done to help in this case is to make sure you diversify your happiness. Don't put all your eggs in the work basket. Think about all your requirements in life and the things that you need to be happy, and then figure out ways to fulfill those not in one thing. So diversify your happiness. Don't put it all in work. Work also cannot be the thing that fulfills all your needs. If you need a friendship, you don't need to get that from work. If you need romance, you don't need to get that from work. Sometimes if you need more money, you don't need to get that all in one job. So figure out how you can diversify your life and diversify your happiness. And that would be the most important thing I can give you. So with this tools, with this advice, with this roadmap, I hope that you can see that this is not something that needs to be given to you. This is something that you can take control of and steer. And you can start it whenever you want. You can start today. You can start tomorrow. Some of you have already started. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. Thanks for having me. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me at wesley83.com. If you want these slides, you can just scan this QR code and you can have access to the slides. The sources that I used to gather the information are also noted in this slide deck. And with that, I wanted to make sure that we could open up for questions if there are any in the audience. Yes.
Is there, through your experience and developing your leadership skills, do you have any approaches to identifying places where your leadership skills are going to be well used, like at companies or communities or groups, like, oh yeah, if I see this, I know it's a place where I'm going to be able to be successful, or if I see this, that's a red flag?
Repeat the question.
So the question is, you do this work, you develop the leadership skills, where can you identify a location to best make sure that they are used and also where they are rewarded? Is that a good interpretation? And the truth is some of it will find you, which is great. One thing about being a leader and making sure that it's clear that you are a leader in a certain industry, people will see that and it will resonate, and then those opportunities will come to you. And I think this goes back to what we were saying, is you were saying, Jay, that no is a complete sentence. So you are you can be a gatekeeper of making sure that you aren't burnt out, that you aren't overworked, because a lot of things will start to come to you. People will start to approach you for different board organizations, volunteers, or even companies, or collaborations. So figure out what makes sense to you and be able to say no to those that don't don't check off your list of your needs. So doing that self-assessment about what you need is very important. So that's one of the things that you'll need to do. Number 2 is that some of these opportunities you'll need to create. Figure out where your passion lies. And remember when I said to diversify your happiness, some of the things you may need to create, you need to make sure that you do. And when you take the time to create these things because of your reputation, that it should give you that network of people to pull from to help make it happen. But also the reputation to be able to raise your hand and say, hey, this is something that I want to put together, and then people will believe you. Because you'll have a name that is known, you'll have a reputation that is known, so you'll also get support to help this endeavor happen, which is really great. And it could be long-term, like a foundation, endowment, that sort of thing, or it could be short-term, like a fundraising thing that you want to do, or is this project that you want to complete. So leadership is a beacon, and it is something that you can put out there, and then will attract like-minded individuals, people who want to come to you and be drawn to you. But you could also use it as a laser, so you can highlight the things that you want to focus on, the things that you want to learn about, or the things you want to be involved in. So it's a tremendous power, leadership, when it's matched with management, when you actually have the authority formally. It really unlocks so much more, that you are pretty much limited to your imagination and limited to your time. So those are the things that you'll be constrained about. Any other questions? Yes.
First, do we?
It's on.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. Do we really have to complain last?
I'm talking about your default.
Okay.
So I know when people feel threatened, it's usually because they don't have information. People usually complain because it doesn't make sense. Why do we have to go here? Why would we have to do that? Why now? The complaining comes from that lack of information. You can complain in any order you want, but your default most likely will be like, that doesn't make sense unless they're about to do, and so your mind will just work more on making sense, because it is a reprogramming that'll happen. And so you don't have to complain last, and you don't have to stop complaining. But most likely, complaining first will be something that just doesn't feel that natural to you.
For the next month, whenever I open my mouth, I'll say to myself, what would Wesley do? So on to the actual question. I found it really interesting, the part about the kind of getting the cheat code and the decoder ring. Listen to what they say, but watch what they do.
Yeah.
And then in those pie charts with the rather dismal correlation, you stopped at executive. If you then went on to founder and then VC, oh my God.
Yeah.
Paul Graham was in the news about the founders bro thing.
Yeah.
Picture from 20 years ago. I did the typical count the number of black faces. Shocking, 0. Mm-hmm. And so my question for you, do you have the cheat code for watching the VC tech industry? Do you feel like you have figured out the difference between what they say, what they do, and you can decode the signal?
I'm trying to not be insulting in my answer. The best I can say is it's self-serving.
I ask because we could talk about, leadership and income, but then when you get into wealth, the reason these Y Combinator fools succeed is because they got in the network.
Yep.
Not because they're smart.
Yeah, they're each are rubbing each other's backs and scratching each other's itch, and they're in a network, and that's because that's the thing that works for them.
Yeah.
So if it's self-serving, it's just because that works, right? It works for them. I can't think of any other answer that doesn't go back to that same thing.
Sure. I was just curious if you had any tips or techniques for kind of the galactic level of influence that we all live under.
Well, remember the 3-part chart of saying you'll know it's working when you'll see these things, and the last one was enlightenment. And so when you have that enlightenment, you realize that just because they're rich, just because they have a lot of money, or they've exited from so many companies, it doesn't mean that they're leaders in the way that you would like to have the same leadership style. And it also doesn't mean that they know what they're doing. When you have that enlightenment, you don't default to saying that, well, if they did it, that means it's right. When you have done all the work and the research about best practices, and then you see what's happening and you see how it's being manipulated, then you understand that there's a man behind the curtain, that there's smoke and then there's mirrors, and then that there's magic pixie dust on stuff. And when you have a lot of money, you can make a lot of things change and move. So the enlightenment of saying that it's not synonymous with it's also a time and place where this thing worked, and understanding that and the way that the structure of that allows you to not fall into that trap of saying, oh gosh, if they said that this is going to be successful, it's going to be successful. Or if you watch Shark Tank and then there's critiquing things like, oh wow, those are really good critiques. Do your own research in terms of understanding, is what they're saying still the case? Some people, in terms of, let's say the people that work these incubators and say that they're successful, they've been successful for a year, 2 years, but then they're repeating their knowledge for another 5, 6, 10 years. If they're not gaining the knowledge and they're just leaning on that reservoir of knowledge that they gained in that short period of time, then they're kind of stunted by that, and then they are not self-aware to know that what they're saying is not true, because it is true to them because they lived it. But they may not know that it's not true now. And they don't have to check. They don't have to verify. That's why the continuous learning part is so important, because just because someone thinks they know something, they may have known it, but that doesn't mean that it is a truism at the very moment. There.
I have a question, and then we have 2 questions from our online audience as well.
Okay.
Which also, if people also have questions, let me know. The question that I have is kind of coming off the conversation that we're having right now. What happens when organizations and communities who are attempting to create opportunities for leadership in Black communities are impacted due to legislation? And I mean, a big example of this is like the Empower Fund that ultimately is being reworked and reworded and restructured, that was offering grants for Black women founders. How do we fight against, how do we be leaders while also having to fight against people who see us trying to build leaders, are actively taking measures to stop that?
Yeah. One is to really have an understanding of what your sphere of influence is. You have a bubble in which you can be highly influential. For me right now, it's this room or this live feed. But in your work environment, it might be just a coworker, or it might be a vendor you're working with, or it might be the code base that you're working on. Having an awareness of your sphere of influence where you can have a lot of autonomy to make your own choices, make your own decisions, and give your own opinion is something that you can work towards expanding, but understanding the outer edges and the boundaries of that is one of the things that will help you keep you sane. The world is a very large place. You can't keep it out, but you also can't fight it and change it all. So if you are not right-sizing your mission, if you're not right-sizing your influence and right-sizing your efforts, then you can get spent and you can get burned out, and that's not a help for anyone. So recognizing and identifying your sphere of influence is the first step, and then figuring out what are the max you can do in there, and then once you know the outer edges, figure out what are the things that are keeping you from expanding, or bringing in other people who have their own sphere of influence and figure out how you can chain together to make a change together.
Thank you. And then we have a comment from, I think, a friend of a lot of folks in the room, Sarah Boyce, who asks, or who says, are there positive and negative signs about a leadership team that you're able to recognize early on during an interview or an onboarding period? And I'm guessing, if so, what are those things?
So that first step of leadership is to listen to what they say and then see what they do. That's the first thing, because some companies and some places lie. If they're not standing up to their own defined values, that is a very big sign that their leadership is either fractured or their culture is such where words matter but actions don't. And that is something that is a really good sign of really good leadership, is if they hold themselves accountable. The way they can do that in several different ways. They can address feedback. Feedback is a 4-step loop. It's asking for it, getting it, deciding what to do with it, and then reporting back on what those decisions are. If they are not doing that 4-part loop, that also shows a weakness in leadership. The other thing is to see if are people treated differently for different reasons that they themselves have power or don't have power. If there is an intern, are they treated with less respect than someone who's a full-time employee? Is a junior developer treated with less respect than a senior developer? Is a manager treated with more respect than an IC? So if the respect is something that is not something that's inherited because you respect me as a person, but something in which people become respected because they've done something, that is also something in terms of leadership where it doesn't feel like they're allowing people to succeed based on things they could do. They're only allowed to succeed on things that they have done.
And then we have a question from Keith. There were a couple here. I'm trying to find it.
Sit tight.
It says there are leaders that management recognize and leaders that help foster other leaders. And Keith says, I've found the second group often gets overlooked. How can foster focused leaders be seen by management? So I'm guessing, how can the people who are doing the work to foster other leaders see and be recognized for their contributions?
Remember that chart at the beginning? There are some things you can change and some things you can't. This system, generally speaking, is not necessarily meant for us or supported to help lean on us. I can say that I feel like I'm a victim of the chart. I'm a victim of that pattern. And that's another reason why success cannot be in one bucket. Success can't just be at work. And also success can't be just defined in promotion and status within a company. It is one of the things that can be in your control, but mostly is not. And if you can think of a reason of how to get that changed, please let me know. But it's not an answer that I know or I can give, unfortunately.
And then last question for you. This one comes from Emmanuel, who asks, what's the best way to lead in a different ecosystem filled with individuals who don't believe in you?
Filled with individuals who what?
I guess the context that I'm that's maybe missing here, and I apologize to anyone online if I'm butchering your question, is if you're coming into a new ecosystem, already having been a leader before, how do you adapt to that new ecosystem and begin the process of establishing yourself as a leader in that space?
So I think the steps is a really good roadmap, but one thing is don't get filled up with thinking you know the answers, even though that you've done the reading. So you need to make sense of the ecosystem. It's like a culture. It's a new language, and so grace yourself with making sure that you understand what is going on and what's happening, the lingua franca of the organization. So be observant before listen before you speak. You have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen in those, use those in those proportions. Once you're able to speak the language and understand what is valued and what is not, then it allows you to get to the point where you can contribute in the ways that align to the value system of what's rewarded in the company or organization. Once you're able to contribute in those ways and then do it consistently, most likely you'll start to have people ask you questions. And then the way that you demonstrate leadership at that point is be able to back up what you're saying with the knowledge and the experience that you have. So those will give you the opportunity to show your past leadership and the potential to adapt and change and learn, but also to contribute back in a way that can enrich the leadership structure and the decision-making capability of the organization. So in order to reestablish yourself as a leader, even though you're brand new, it's not something I feel that you can rush, but it's something where once you know the best practices, once again, in the thing that you already find interesting, whether it's deployment, CI/CD, whatever, marketing, production, anything, you can immediately probably see ways that you can make things better in the place that you are, but make sure you understand the most effective way of doing that is to build a relationship so that you can work on those, rather than just saying you're wrong, I'm right, and here's how you do it. So that goes back to the interpersonal communication piece. So that's why that's really important, because when you are in new environments, you do need to start from scratch and building those relationships again.
Awesome. Everyone, again, Wesley Faulkner.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we will return for our interactive sessions. But before those sessions, we will have a lightning talk from one of our sponsors in 10 minutes. All right, we are back and we are getting ready to do our interactive sessions. And for those that don't know, I mean, interactive sessions, some people think of them as like, I'll call them like lightning plus talks, because ultimately they're not meant to be incredibly long. They're about 10, 15 minutes, but they do encourage some level of question. I don't know how many times I've given a lightning talk and then been like, or like I've seen someone give a lightning talk and I'm like, I want to talk to that person about this thing. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of that opportunity, and we're calling them interactive talks. And unfortunately, one of our speakers, there was a hold up with their flight, so they're not going to be here. So they'll be here, they just won't be here in time to give this talk. In place of that, I am going to hand the mic over to Lauren to tell us a little bit about our, I forgot what sponsorship tier we put them in, silver sponsor, the PSF.
Thank you. Where should I start? I'll keep it really short. I'm just really happy to be here representing the Python Software Foundation. Python Software Foundation is the nonprofit organization behind the Python language. And part of our mission is to support the Python language and also to support an international and diverse group of Python programmers. So supporting Black Python devs is squarely in our mission. We're so happy to be able to support them. I'm happy for all of you to be here and online and watching this later. I wanted to make sure to invite you all to watch Jay's keynote from the most recent PyCon US. That's on the PyCon US YouTube channel. It's really excellent, and I won't do it justice by summarizing, but I invite you to watch it. And yeah, we just wanted to, we know that being part of a group that's minoritized, marginalized, underrepresented in the tech community presents a lot of barriers to participating. There are a lot of challenges specific to Black Python developers, so we're super glad this group exists and just glad to have a way to support you. All right.
And now I would like to introduce two of our interactive speakers. The first one is, I would say that they were like on the glow up of Black Python devs, because for those that don't know, we were this really small community, and then we went to DjangoCon last year. And then all of a sudden, people started coming up with ideas, and they got really tired of me saying, okay, do them, but you're in charge. That being said, one of them took that advice and ran with it. So that of course, is Afi, and we're really excited for Afi to be giving a talk about our open source program. And then the second one is one of our newer folks who has taken a significant step in becoming a community leader in their own country of Zim, which I'm not allowed to say the whole name because apparently I say it wrong. I'm going to bring that up every time, just so you know. But it's just been amazing to see a developer who's newer to me in terms of getting to know them, just be so passionate about building community in his hometown as well as on the outskirts of his hometown, as we've learned, and just have that desire of seeing people be developed in an area and then not take those skills and leave, but to really like stay there, continue to develop that space. And I think that that's something that we often hear about in the Black community of, I grew up in a small town near Knoxville, Tennessee. And even like we were told, you're smart enough, move to Knoxville, move to Atlanta, move away anywhere but here. So to see someone kind of take an early stage in leadership and develop it, but develop it with a heart that is like, I want to keep these skills in my home and keep these skills in my community is super awesome. So, and that's going to be Kudzai. But first, let's learn more about the open source program for Black Python devs with Afi.
Hi everyone, I promise it's going to be pretty fast. I recently learned I speak fast. I speak fast when I'm nervous, and I have a lisp, so yeah, I'll go through this fast. One moment, let me just switch. Awesome. Oops. Yeah. So I think a few weeks ago we started the open source program for BPD. Louder. Yeah. I feel like I'm shouting. A few weeks ago we started the open source program for BPD, and it came as a result of Voda and I went around to the stands at PyCon US. There were so many stands, about 50, 60, 70. So I promise we went to each individual stand at PyCon US to talk about what they do. I'm sure people were like, what are these girls? Like, why are they asking so many questions? But we wanted to find people that would probably partner and who wanted help on their projects, repositories that we could contribute to. So after the conference, I sat down and came up with a timeline of about 3 months, and we had a discussion, and then we're like, 3 months is quite long for the program, so we shortened it to 2 months, right? So we had an inaugural open source program for BPD, which was 2 months, and then we kickstarted it at the end of August. So it's running for 2 months, and it ends in October. So the 23rd of September, which is next week, yes, will be the mid review, like check in to see the progress so far. So I'll just quickly run through it and then we'll see. So the agenda is simply short, the program and timelines, and then the updates for the program. Oh yeah, this is just a picture from the last PyCon. I was not in, by the way. So the timeline, as I said, the contribution phase started on the 26th of August. The mid-program review is on the 23rd of September, and at the end of the contribution phase is the 21st of October, and then there'll be a final week to like do a showcase and then see the updates, the number of PRs merged. Some have been open already, but most have not been merged yet. Oh, I forgot to mention, this program is for people who are totally new to open source contributions, because it's quite hard to like get started with open source contributions. There's a lot of things to do. I'm speaking fast again. There's a lot of things to do. There's documentation. People are interested in UI, UX. People are interested in design. People are interested in code, integration. So I listed out all the sectors, right, under the repositories that we're going to contribute to. We have 3 repositories right now. So the BPD website or repo, we have Hamilton and Burr. So those 2 projects are Python related, and they're under DagWorks as a company. So we partnered with Stefan, who is the owner of DagWorks, and then we spoke to him, and then we got him on board so that we could get people to contribute to Python, do that, and also to BPD. So there's a whole list or sheet of issues, about 100 issues, that we decided to give people the opportunity to explore, just see what you want to pick up, see what you want to do, and then yes, they did that. So far, this was a kickoff call. So we had a kickoff call in the beginning before we started. So to just familiarize, know like what's going to happen, see faces, so that it makes it more human or friendly. Because normally, if you have a program without having a kickoff call, it's like, okay, it's like there's a wall or barrier between you and the people contributing. So far we have 39 contributors instead of 40. One person dropped out, which the first morning session, remember I mentioned something about Viola telling me to manage my expectations, because I like planning and I like seeing that the things that I plan go exactly. But I realized that life doesn't really go according to the plans I make, and I have to live with it, and it really sucks, but that's life. So now we have 39 people, and the mentors are 12. We have a mid-year review coming up, as I said, and a couple of PRs have been made. So stay tuned. We'll put all the statistics out when we are done. And yes, if you have any question, can you leave them in the chat and I'll answer? Or if you have any question, I could answer. So yeah, thank you so much.
I have a question.
Okay.
I mentioned in the morning session that since we started the program, what we've seen is a massive uptick in the, I don't have the thing that's over there. We've had a massive uptick in the number of contributions made to the website, and it seems like not all of those contributions are coming from the program, but I wonder if the two might be connected in some way.
Yeah, probably. So the other people, so the truth is, the number we capped it to was 40 because there was a lot, about 4 times the number expected. And because it's the first time, we didn't want to take a huge number like 200. That would be very difficult to like manage. So we decided to try 40, right, to see how it goes, and then we could implement the other ones. So I sent out waitlist emails that, hey, this is not a rejection because there's not really much of a criteria to like bring you on board, but it's just the quantity that we can deal with at the moment. So in the next cohort, you will bring you on board to handle that. So there are other people who are not in the current cohort but are in the wait list who are actually interested in contributing. So that's why you see people contributing to that. Yeah.
You touched on this, but are you hoping, it sounds like you're hoping to continue this, repeat it, what are your hopes for the future?
I would like to, yeah, I think we would like to continue it, but I would like to take a break before continuing it.
Yeah, it probably not over winter.
Yes. So probably the next one I'd have to look at the reflections from this one because there's a lot of things I realized that I didn't think about, and I have to note them down, come up with like a report, like assessment, and then come up with a more solid one for the next cohort. Any contributions, any advice?
Or this is less about the program, but more about like, what, see, like with the program, when you do like buying time to like contribute, like work on open source, if they also can have a job, when do they come out?
Yes, this was a big thing. Also, I think in the morning we had a session where we talked about how some open source contributions aren't really paid, and like open source, those things mostly. So people have real jobs. Everybody has something to do. So people find time in the evenings, and we made it quite flexible. And we mentioned also on the kickoff call that we are not strictly saying that you have to contribute 10 hours. You just have to commit about 2 hours a week to doing that, and just make sure that in 4 weeks at least you've opened 1 PR, so that at the end of the contribution phase you have 1 or 2 PRs open and merged. So that it's not a strict rule or guideline. You're not holding your neck. It's like quite flexible.
Yeah, I think my question was around the projects that the participants work on. Like, where did you guys find them? Are you just searching? Or?
Again, back to the PyCon US stands. Well, the people we went to talk to, one of them was DarkWorks. So Stefan was there at the stand, and he was like, oh yeah, like we actually need, like, we'd love to have people working on a project. So aside BPD, could we come up with an agreement to add Hamilton and Burr, which are Python projects, which were PyCon US stands, I think in the last hour, so that we could jump on. So he actually helped a lot. He selected beginner-friendly tags and labeled them in GitHub, so that I added them to the sheet, and it's easy for people to go and pick or look through the repos with the labels and then choose. So that's how we did it. So in the future, probably we would have to partner or look for more repos, but there are still more issues available for people to work on.
I think that also played a part into the number, like the increase of PRs that we've seen, because as one of the people kind of responsible for finding and delegating issues, a lot of what I was doing was going in and looking for some of those things that were kind of heavy lifts and making them smaller, making them slightly easier. So instead of like completely redesign the header on the website, it was like, maybe just fix the mobile like ratio of this so that it's actually responsive. And then just using those labels. Like, I think Good First Issues, it's so funny. Like, one, I have a blog post that says, most good first issues are not good first issues. But then like also, if you do work to actively make good first issues as a contributor, I've learned it really does make it easier for people to jump on and do one. And once they do one, they're more likely to do two. Once they do two, they'll do three, and you will see them, they'll opt up to do the more complicated tasks as well. So I think just contributing to the project in itself is a great first step to make that jump into the next thing.
Yeah, there's one thing that I also realized, and I said at the kickoff call, and it was the goal of this program was not to necessarily compete, but was to gain skills, because most people who are blacks or colored would love to jump on open source projects, but they don't know how to. And most people don't also have open source experience. So this was just like a way for them to break through and have the experience in either documentation, design, UI, UX, or any other way. And so yes, I try to tell the mentors to be more of collaborating, like have a collaboration mindset and be more open so that there's no competition. It's not about who finishes the first PRs, no. It's about the growth and the journey, because a couple of PRs open are quite, I don't know what the right word is, but I realized that that's something I have to add to the reports, because there's a way to go about PRs even though there's a README file. And people probably have open issues that solve about 6 things in one PR. You know, it's supposed to be little by little. So there are a lot of things. I know Jay has had back and forth. I'm really, really sorry. I didn't see that coming, but I have to fix that. So yes, that's one of the things that I realized. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much.
And then up next is our other interactive speaker, but give us a couple of minutes just so that we can shift things over.
Okay, is my mic on? Okay, awesome. All right. So, when I was in university, I took a class called Creativity in Business. And my lecturer for this class was absolutely obsessed with Malcolm Gladwell. He would always tell us, if you guys want to be successful in your careers, in life, and business, then you must read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. It took me 6 years, but I finally decided to take him up on this piece of advice and read this book for myself. For anyone that's unfamiliar with Outliers, in this book, Malcolm Gladwell challenges the idea that success is purely based on individual talent or merit. He explores factors such as opportunity, cultural background, and the infamous 10,000 hours rule as contributing factors for a person's success. If I could sum up all the themes that he discusses in the book into one sentence, it would be with this quote: "Who we are cannot be separated from where we're from." As I read Outliers, I began to think about where I'm from. Particularly, I was asking myself, does my environment do enough to support the people who live in it? My name is Kudzai. Some people call me Bam. I answer to both. And I am from a small Southern African country called Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a very beautiful country, but it's also a country that is full of problems. We have very high unemployment rates, so high that they've actually stopped giving accurate figures for it. We've been in a never-ending economic crisis, and we have government policy decisions that have left us sanctioned, isolated, and left behind from the rest of the world. As I continued to read this book, Outliers, I wondered, where can Zimbabweans get their 10,000 hours? Where can Zimbabweans get their 10,000 hours and their opportunities? If someone was curious about working with Python, where can they go experiment? Or if someone actually said, hey, I want to learn Python, who can teach them? Or what if they want to join a community of coders, enthusiasts, and experts? Where are the meetups in Zimbabwe? I felt armed with a new purpose. I wanted to try create a transformative culture and build a supportive and sustainable ecosystem around Python programming. How was I going to do this? I had no idea. I had no answer for it. But I felt that I could try. Because someone once told me that the ideas that you come up with could look bad and they could fail. But failure is not a destination. And if we keep trying things, we might eventually stumble onto something great. And I say we because I also realize that whatever I'm going to do, I can't do it alone. In Zimbabwe, there's an organization called Uncommon. Uncommon is a non-profit organization that's headquartered in New York, and they have program operations in Zimbabwe. Their goal is to make Zimbabwe the most tech-literate country in Africa. So in February, I got invited to the offices to give a talk in one of their teaching hubs, and I spoke about Python and the open source community. After my talk, a lot of the students came up to me and they had these questions about, hey, I want to learn Python. Where can I go? Can you teach me? You know, they wanted more than the 30 minutes I was given to speak at that venue. So I then went to the Uncommon team and I said, hey guys, a lot of the students came up to me, they want to learn Python. Can we do a Python workshop with you guys? I will put it together and I'll figure out the rest. And they were on board. They said, hey, that sounds like a great idea, let's do it. Suddenly, I had my first partner, someone that was willing to help me put this together. But I knew I still needed more. This brought me to PyCon US earlier this year, where I got to meet the founder of Black Python Devs, Jay Miller. And at the end of the conference, Jay said something to me that I'll always remember. He just straight up asked me, so Bam, what are you working on in Zim, and how can we support you? My first reaction was, what makes him think I'm working on anything in Zim? But then I also thought quickly and said, you know what? This is an opportunity. Jay, for whatever reason, has come up to me and he says, I think you're working on something. Tell me what it is, and let's figure out how we can make it happen. So I told Jay about the workshop. And Jay, if you know Jay, he didn't waste any time and immediately got to work to help me figure out how we were going to do this. And I have to say, the Black Python Devs community was instrumental in putting this together. To start with, they gave me a platform to practice the workshop. We did a practice on the workshop on Fridays, where we normally have coffee and code. We had a live workshop, and I got to do it in front of everyone on the Discord, which was really great. They also helped me refine the workshop. So one of the key ideas of the workshop we're going to do was that we wanted everyone to leave the workshop with a game of rock, paper, scissors that they developed in Python. And I had an idea of how I wanted this to happen. And what Jay and the rest of the Black Python Devs community did for me was that they helped me refine it and figure out how we were going to make it more concise and make it a more enjoyable experience for everyone that's involved. And the best part of what Black Python Devs did for us was that they agreed to sponsor the workshop. And they made me look and feel like a rock star, because we really needed some money to make things happen, to pay for lunch and all of these things. And Jay didn't even hesitate and said, yes, absolutely, we can sponsor it. So on Friday, July 19th this year, we hosted a beginner's Python workshop at one of Uncommon's learning hubs in an area called Zivarasekwa, which is a low-income area in Harare, Zimbabwe. And it was a big success. I want to give a few stats about the workshop right now. So we had 1 week to promote it, and within that week, we got 70 people who signed up for the workshop, and our target was 30, so we exceeded that. We sent out 30 confirmation emails to the people that we accepted, and we received 22 yeses, 0 nos, but we got 8 no responses. That's more of an issue with accessibility to affordable Wi-Fi in Zimbabwe. and we had 17 people show up to the workshop. After the workshop, we took a survey to get some feedback about the content, and a lot of people were very satisfied about what we did and what they learned on the day. We also got feedback about future workshops, particularly want to know, would people be interested in attending more Python workshops in the future? And everyone that took the survey absolutely said yes, they would love more workshops. And this is also added by the fact that everyone came up to us afterwards and said, that was great, let's do this again, when's the next one? We didn't have a next one planned, so I took a couple of weeks to take a break because I was a bit burnt out, and I got on a call with Jay. Because I knew from my experience speaking to Jay that if I come to him with something, he's going to be able to refine whatever idea I had. So I said to Jay, hey Jay, look, people want to do another workshop. What do you have? What do you think? This is an idea that I have. So this slide is just, basically what I just said now. People are eager for more content. They wanted more. They wanted a place where they could collaborate with more developers, have more discussions about code, about Python, and also figure out how they can chart a career path within this space as a Zimbabwean, as someone living in Africa. So me and Jay eventually came up with this idea called Pi Create Zim. Or Jay helped me really paint it in a way that made sense to me. So Google has Google Summer of Code. I said, hey, we're going to create Zimbabwe a winter of code because it's going to be winter in Zimbabwe. And it's essentially going to be 1 month of learning. We're going to be learning Python. We're going to be coding. It's going to be hackathons. We're going to have meetups where we're going to have guests come over. They're going to speak. People are going to be able to interact with one another and really build a community. We want to cultivate opportunities and get people a space where they can chip away at their 10,000 hours, as Malcolm Gladwell says, will lead to success. That is all I have for today. I'm going to be here all week, and I really want to encourage you guys, if you have any questions about this idea of Pi Create Zim, please come up to me and let's talk about it. I have big ambitions for this. Me and Jay spoke about it. I'm excited about it. I know if we manage to put it together, it's going to be great. Uncommon is on board as well in Zimbabwe, so we have a local partner. And yeah, I hope we create something really exciting. Those are my social medias. I'm on LinkedIn mostly, Twitter, X, kinda. And yeah, I have a blog. Thank you.
Are there any questions? If not, I have questions. I always have questions. You know I have questions.
I know. What's the question?
The first question I would have is, can you describe some of the backgrounds that some of the folks that you were teaching were coming from? I mean, it sounds like most of these folks were very, very new to Python, but were they students? Were they career changers? What did that look like?
Yeah, so a lot of the people that, I'm assuming you're talking about the workshop, that came for the workshop, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of them were students from Uncommon. So Uncommon has a curriculum that they teach people programming, but they mainly program in JavaScript. But a lot of people had interest in Python, and they don't do Python. So people signed up from Uncommon, they were students, and they came in from that, through that channel. And then we also had people that just, saw our posts on the internet. They came from anywhere. They were mostly between the ages of 18 and 25, I would say. So a lot of young people. And yeah, a lot of them had never coded in their lives. So that was also where we got the motivation to come up with another thing. Because we might cover variables and think, okay, this is something that should be quick to understand. But someone that's never coded before, I was having a conversation earlier today that they have to overcome the mental barrier of, can I actually learn how to code? And at the same time, try to understand what it is, what it means to create a variable and such. So it was really interesting managing those two groups and, giving them a space to learn and ask questions and be curious and hopefully take away something good at the end of the workshop. Yeah.
A kind of related question.
Yeah.
I'm curious what the folks who came to your workshop, like what they were hoping to get out of Python. Like, was it like hoping to get jobs overseas, or hoping to help them with stuff they're already doing, or
Yeah.
what were the kinds of goals they came to you with?
It's a great question. So I think a lot of people in Zim in general, I have this joke that I make with people, like, people in America chase the American dream, right? In Zim, there's a Zimbabwean dream, but that dream is to get out of Zim. Yeah. So a lot of people want to learn Python because they believe it can be a ticket out of the country, a ticket to a better life. And I think a lot of those things are true. But, you know, I think I've also realized that that's not a reality for many people. Not everyone's going to be able to leave. Not everyone's going to be able to get a remote job that pays them really well. So I think I was trying to shift the mindset a bit to say, hey, what if we built like a culture of like coding and like learning these things, and then we start creating things locally, you know, and then we don't have to think about, oh, I need to leave for me to find success in my career in Python. Maybe now it's because, okay, I know how to do a little bit of Python, but I met this guy at the workshop or wherever at the meetups, and he was really great at Python. And we can come together and we can, like, you know, start something locally, and it could change our lives, it could change the people's lives in Zim. And yeah, that's where it is.
We did have one question from online that asks, how can we as individuals contribute to the community and the summer and winter sessions that you're working on in Zim?
That's a great question. I love that question. So I think right now, because we're moving from a one-day workshop to a month, I'm looking at two things. Financially, we need to figure out how we're going to be able to support that. And then secondly, it's also thinking about the content. How do we keep people engaged for a month? You know, how do we structure that? And I think, Jay, this was a conversation I was really going to come to you with. So if someone online is saying, hey, you know, I've got ideas about how, you know, what we could do, what you could possibly do with this in terms of the learning material, in terms of the meetups and like how that could look. Or if they just have any random idea that I haven't thought of as well, I'm open to whatever suggestions people may have. I think that's the fun part about trying to put something together. Like, you just kind of throw things at the wall and see what sticks and what makes sense. So, yeah.
Again, I've got all the questions, so I'm making space for others.
I'm going to say this, and you're going to have an expression on your face. Organizer burnout is a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so. Have you identified your replacement?
Woo.
Because we talked about succession planning so much.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm not going to lie. I've thought about that so much, but I haven't been able to identify how this can sustain without me. But that is a big thing that I have thought about. And I'm just like, because after the first workshop, I was tired. I was meant to have a call with Jay like immediately afterwards, but I took like 2 weeks to just like, you know, just plug away, what am I looking for? Just take a break, yeah. But I think once we start this process, I think I'm hoping that I'm gonna work with people that are great, people that I can trust, and people that also really want to make this work. And through that, I can see how this can continue and grow long term. Because that is the goal. I don't want this to be something that only works if I'm there. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, I have an idea and I'm putting it out there and I'm saying who wants to be a part of this? And then we can grow together. And yeah, if I'm not there, it can keep happening. Yeah.
No other questions?
Thank you, guys.
We are going to take a quick 5-minute break to set up for our next session, which is our panel with select guests. So 5 minutes, and then we will jump back in. All right, we are back, and before we get started with this awesome panel, I did want to take a moment to talk about our lanyards. These lanyards were procured from our vice executor, I would say the person who's actually in charge, Velda, who was very adamant about like Black Python Devs is this community made up of so many different cultures, so many different smaller communities. We should do something to kind of showcase a little bit of that community that, you know, not everyone would be able to join us from, which, I mean, I feel, to be honest, it's the African community is probably about represented about how our actual community is. So like, good on you. But Velda actually called me in the middle of like Nairobi, like on the street, like, hey, I found this guy that can make these bracelets for us. And I'm like, well, bracelets aren't gonna say, no, they're like necklaces, and you can use them as like waistlets and bracelets and necklaces, but I think we could also use them as lanyards. And I was like, do it. I don't like, you got a vision. I don't want to get in the way of the vision. So yeah, all of your lanyards here, which I hope that you can, you know, I hope they're compatible with the DjangoCon lanyards as well, or the DjangoCon badges. Those are handcrafted from a vendor in Nairobi. And one of the things that we talked about in the keynote was that a part of our vision is to support not just Black developers, but the communities of those developers. And this is one of the reasons why we love Durham so much, because around us are several Black-owned businesses that we've been supporting kind of without really talking about it, which I think is like the best way to do it is like, hey, just go and buy stuff normally and hey, know that you're supporting a Black-owned business. But then also doing some of those small touches, like just getting lanyards from Kenya, which like, this will replace my other favorite lanyard, and I'll probably wear it at all the conferences now. So with that being said, that's just a small touch to talk about the person here who came up with all these questions, as well as speak to kind of the vision that we have at Black Python Dev. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Velda, who is going to be leading our leadership panel.
Awesome. Okay, so welcome to this panel. We have great leaders here who have served in one way or the other in different communities and in different spaces. So this session is about to know like some of the questions you have like in conflict resolutions, how to actually build and sustain different communities. So we're gonna start with introductions first so that everybody knows what you do. Feel free to make it as short or as long as not so long, longer than 5 minutes. So you can go ahead and start with Monica.
Hi everyone, my name is Monica Yugi from Kenya. I'm a quality assurance engineer and also the lead organizer for PyCon Kenya, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Lauren Crary. I work for the Python Software Foundation, and I'm the director of resource development, which is mostly about basically the getting money inside, and everyone else spends the money. And I believe I was sold on this as a community panel, not as a leadership panel, which might have been on purpose, because I might have said, I can't do, that's not me, but amongst so many leaders in this room, but I think that's probably a common sentiment.
Yeah, I feel that too. Jay asked if you'd speak like a couple weeks ago as well, and so you can't say no to Jay as a general rule I've learned. But yeah, I'm Jeff Triplett. I'm from Lawrence, Kansas. I work at Revolution Systems. We're a Django Python consulting agency. I was on the Python Software Foundation Board of Directors for 5 years. I've been off for about a year. DEFNA, the nonprofit that runs DjangoCon US, I co-founded that 9 years ago. I think we're coming on 10 years of DjangoCons, 9 years, 10 years, something like that. So yeah, and I've just been involved with Django since, I guess, 2006 maybe. So Django was maybe a year or two old. So.
Awesome. Now you could keep it. So the first question to you, since you've served in different boards and still serving as an advisor for Black Python devs, the question here, since you also began at some point as a community organizer, what are some of the skills and experiences that helped you be in an advisory position to this particular point?
I think mostly because starting with DjangoCon US, and you just learn a lot over the years. And I think with the organization, There may be some things that relate to a global organization wanting to organize. So part of it was knowing Jay for 5 years and just being there to be asked questions that maybe starting a nonprofit. Definitely as a 501c3, which is a U.S. nonprofit. And so as a co-founder, that was quite a process to go through to establish it. And also, like, I don't think any of us really realized the impact that DjangoCon US would have and be able to have like events like this be able to happen the days before DjangoCon US. So that's pretty neat. So skill-wise, I didn't know how to say no. Started organizing, got a wonderful group of people who've helped grow it to what it is today. And you know, you learn a lot over 9 years of just like figuring stuff out. And so when you put a date on the calendar like you all did to have this event, and you show up and people show up and believe in what you're doing, good things tend to happen. So,
awesome. Thank you for that. So the next question goes to Lauren. So from the PSF kind of side, or rather the organizing or the organization side, the first question I have for you is, what are some of the key considerations or strategies for ensuring long-term financial stability for communities?
Yeah, I would say that from my perspective, my experience is, like I say, as the revenue side at the PSF, and before that I worked for an education startup based in East Africa for many years doing fundraising as well as US operations. So I have more experience on the nonprofit organization side than the community side, but I would say the number one thing is aligning your income strategy to your program strategy, to your general goals. So making sure that the way you want to take in money is going to be a natural fit for the goals and values of your organization. So, like an example I always think about is, if the kind of people who give you money are like the number one thing they want is like cute pictures of kids, because they want to feel good that they're supporting cute kids. Like, my organization was never going to produce the cutest pictures of kids. Like, there were other people who are photography and marketing experts, and like that was their main model. They were going to get that kind of funding. But what we were good at was producing data. So people who really cared about data and analysis and proven solutions, those were the kinds of people who were going to be good supporters for us. So it aligned our strategy of doing evidence-based work with evidence-based funding. So that looks really different for different communities, but I think in the long term, that's what sets you up for success.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the next question goes to Monica. So the next question, the next question goes to Monica. So we understand that you also transitioned to being the full-time leader for PyCon Kenya from being a co-organizer. So one of the question is, how did you transition from just being a co-organizer to inheriting the community as a whole?
So for me, I think the former organizer was overwhelmed and what he said. So I had to be recruited because he had to step out. Yeah. And there was something that was missing, which he realized, I think 3 years ago, somebody to engage in the community, which I fit. So that's how I got involved, and now taking the leadership.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are some of the challenges you had when you inherited the community, since the community had like set timelines or the way that they used to do things? And how did you experience any conflict while trying to change things now that there's new leadership involved? And how did you do all that or handle that?
Yeah, there's a lot. I'll start by saying whenever we have monthly meetings, there was no, you see the way in DjangoCon, we have a template where we follow when having our meetings. Yeah. We never had that. We just need to go into a meeting and everyone talks. We take 3 hours of talking about volunteers. So at least when I came in and getting experience from Python and DjangoCon, we now have a template that at least we follow, we go in, everybody knows what they're going to do. Then we also have deadlines. We have also KPIs, and that is what has kept us going as a community. and hoping that we'll see the impact next year in February when we have our next event in Kenya. Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to slightly open it up to anybody who has a question to this point. That I have a couple more, but are there any questions to this point that you have based on the conversations that have been had previously? Okay. Yeah.
So I think my question to any one of you guys or all of you is more about like time management. I'm assuming like you guys are all like really busy with other things. How do you manage, how do you find time to be like your best selves when it comes to like these other things and not feeling like you need to, we're good? Oh, okay, cool. And not feeling like you need to give less to certain issues because, like, for example, Lauren, when it comes to like the money side of things, I'm sure that's a really big responsibility. But, you know, you've got other responsibilities. How do you like not get burnt out and feel like, you know, this isn't something I want to spend as much time doing?
Okay, for me, apart from work and my life, community is something that I enjoy doing. And it's only that the reason why I'm not doing it as a full-time is because I've never gotten a job that pays me for it. I do it voluntarily every time. So I love doing that, and also set my weekends for community, whether it's talking to people, helping someone, mentoring. I love doing that. Like something, even my boss complains, I'm a QA engineer, but also manage the social media. So he's telling me I excel in social media than QA. And I'm like, he even told me to think about what I want to be in life. So yeah.
Well, I'm cheating because this is my job. So I'm really lucky. It's much easier for me that way. But in terms of balancing within my work, fundraising, like many things, is hard because there's no end to what you could do, right? You could chase every prospect. You could treat every donor like your highest level donor. You could fly out and visit everyone. You could call everyone. You could email there's always more you could be doing. So I just try to keep in mind prioritizing and doing top priorities first, and everything has a trade-off, and just like, if I don't get to the lower priority things on my list, that's okay. That's the trade-off that I made, and there's only so much you can do. And sorry, one other editorial is that a thing I've learned is that you will get cheered on while you hurt yourself if you're working too hard. But not sometimes because someone's exploiting you, but sometimes just because they don't know, they don't know, right? So you have to be in charge of, that's why they call it self-care. No one else can do it for you. So I think just knowing you only get this one body, right? You only get this one life, so you're gonna use it, and taking care of it is not optional.
I've got a fairly privileged perspective as well, because our company tends to do things for the community because it helps the community and helps us, and it's just kind of like doing good for the community also helps business as well. We don't do it strictly for business, but it helped me be able to have some time that I could spend to make sure DjangoCon US happened at a time that if there wasn't a DjangoCon US, then that could hurt us as an industry as well. And so not everybody can work for an employer who gives you that space as well. I couldn't make it my full-time job, but if I was off a little bit on hours, I was never going to hear about it. And so, again, overly privileged to have that. Not everybody can have that as well. But I also spent a lot of my own time too before I had a family. That was my hobby. Some people play basketball, some people play sports, they run. That was kind of my hobby for a long time. It's not a healthy hobby, like walk and do these things, but so that was part of it.
Yeah. So I have a follow-up question for you. So how do you measure the success of your leadership, seeing that you've served in different capacities in different communities as well as foundations as well? How do you measure the impact or the level of success of your leadership?
I stepped down as DEFNA president a year ago, and there's a DjangoCon this year. I chaired for several years. I chaired as well. So removing yourself from that and seeing things happen and be as good or better than what I did, I think that's a good sign of things. Leadership in general to me is more like, and there was such a good talk earlier with Wesley about leadership. For me, it's about like noticing the opportunities where if somebody has to push the broom, I would rather push the broom. If I'm a leader who only tries to sweep up after everybody, that's not healthy either. And so I think setting examples of nothing is beneath us to do, it's helping community, help people. With DjangoCon itself, you can measure it over years of like how much the community has grown. For me, I used to go to DjangoCons where there were only white people on stage, mostly men. And so when I look at the number of keynoters we've had over 9 years, where they're from, gender diversity, lots of diversity, I think that's how that's what recharges my batteries and say, we could have done better, but I think we've done a pretty good job.
Okay. The other question goes to, is directed to any of you. So if you're in a position of leadership at this point, how are you thinking about your succession? Like, are there measures you've put in place to ensure that even if you drop and die right now, the community or everything you have is set in place for somebody else to come in and just take on the mantle and continue leading? What are some of the things that you would also share with other people who are leaders here and who also don't have a plan yet for succession, and what are some of the steps they could take to do that?
I guess I'll start then. I think that's a really great place to be, but I think that's a level of healthy it takes a while to get to, because when you first do your Black Python Summit, Dev Summit, you just need to make it happen. And you can't really plan succession until one thing has happened.
Yeah.
And once you've done it and you realize, I think Lauren earlier mentioned this, leave it on the field kind of mantra of like, first you have to have it, see how things go, and then figure out from there what that should look like. And if the community cares, they're going to want to keep having that as well. So get to that point, and then for me, I can't really speak to the rest of it because I did step down, and it is happening. So just growing the community, see who wants to be involved, who wants to make sure it's going to keep happening. That's what I did.
Okay. For me, I feel like you need to have a documentation, keep track of what you're doing, so that if somebody comes, same way we do with coding, have a documentation so that when someone comes in, they're able to read through and do whatever they need to do. And then have somebody, like a backup in case of anything, and let them be good in what they do as well. Just train them. Yeah.
Yeah, documentation is something that you can start doing right away, and that doesn't even have to be for succession. That can be for next year you. It's also useful. I would add that when you're at a stage it's possible, trying to have roles be broken down in ways that it's easier to pass it on. So if the role is like one person just organizes everything and everything lives in their head and they have to be good with people and they have to be organized as spreadsheets and they have to be a bookkeeper, that's really hard to pass on because you need someone who can do all those things. But if you can break it into like, we need one person who can run registration and we need one person who can monitor the sponsor email. If you can break the roles into chunks that are well documented, that makes it easier to think about succession.
Yeah, and nobody loves having conflict, right? Nobody wants to be rubbing shoulders and being like, oh, but there is like a beef going on in the channel and somebody needs to come in and try to figure out how the middle ground of everything. So what are some of the types of conflicts that all of you have had to deal with, and how did you navigate past that and ensure that, well, when there's conflict, it's like manageable conflict and not like conflict that blows up and makes everybody question what the organization is about or the community is about? So how do you get to manage and navigate conflict?
The worst blow-ups I've seen in community management were like a pebble in your shoe, and it's rubbed for a long time, and then it's developed a blister. Most of the time, the worst ones I see is because something just isn't managed, or it's uncomfortable to have conflict. And I've yet to be on a board or with a group of people who like conflict. And so it tends to be this like spilling over. And so sometimes everybody's super nice in the Python and Django community, but sometimes people are so nice that they let things go for too long. And so I kind of find that just by starting off of like, just stating this is going to be awkward or this is something, just like getting it out there with a small group or people who are impacted, and just have the conversation up front. That tends to make things not boil over later. Doesn't always, but you just can't avoid it, or otherwise the people who are causing the conflict will stick around and everybody else is going to leave. And then that's going to be worse as future organizers or people come into that community. Code of conducts have helped a lot, but you have to enforce it. I feel like that's a similar vein. But yeah, just don't put it off, and it's hard. And if you need training, there are resources, there's YouTube, there's places you can go now to at least kind of learn how to start the conversation. The conversations are never as bad as I think they're going to be, but you just got to get it out there, and you probably have a training on how to do this.
No.
Okay.
I'm going to go YouTube it now. I have the most experience with conflicts like internally within an organization or organizing group. I always try to just start by reminding ourselves often like out loud that we're all like doing it for the same reasons. We share values. We're trying to be we're on the same team, same side of the table, and starting there. Trying to keep coming back to like, even if I am very frustrated with this person and what they're saying is like, feels like it's really causing me problems, it comes from a place of they want the same things I do and they want a healthy community or whatever, and that helps get through it and, you know, be able to work together afterwards.
Yeah, okay. You could pass it on to Dreamo. Hi, Dreamo.
Hello.
You could introduce yourself.
All right. My name is Benedict Kofi Amufa, and I'm from Ghana, right? So I help with the communication team in Python Ghana community, and also I'm an organizer for this year's conference, DjangoCon US. Thank you.
He doesn't know it yet, but he's also a senior advisor to Black Python.
Yeah.
His flight came in late, so he missed the announcement.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. So this question also includes some form of Green Lantern phrasing in your darkest days, in your oldest whatever. So in one of your darkest days, what keeps you motivated and engaged to continue your role as a leader in the different communities you're in?
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so I believe in a sense of community, being a place where individuals should feel belonged. So what keeps me going in being a leader is like, at first I check the works of existing leaders. That motivates me, because when I got to know the Python open source community, it changed my whole perspective about leadership. We have individuals who are working in big tech, and aside everything, dedicate time for the community. An example is my friend Kathy. She's been doing amazing works, the works of Jay, Don Wages and everything. So I checked their profile, and I realized these individuals, aside their normal full-time job, they also believe in the sense of giving back to the society. And those are the things that I see that motivate me as an upcoming developer, or as someone who has aspiration of contributing to the Python software, to also contribute my quota to it. So that's what motivates me.
Yeah.
I have a community question.
Okay.
He wasn't here for big fan. So I know that you spend some of your time in the U.S. and some of your time in Ghana, and you act as a leader kind of in both of those areas. Have you found any challenges of balancing that? I have this community here that I have to deal with their own culture and cultural differences, and then I fly across the ocean and then go to another community that has their culture and their cultural differences. Have you had any struggles with that, and if so, how have you tried to balance that out?
All right, so my first international open source community is the DjangoCon US. So back in 2021, I was in my final year at the university, right? Then I saw this community, then I reached out. Then I started to volunteer. Then later on, I was added to the organizer. Then we were on the same Slack. Back then in Ghana, I was part of the communication team. So when I was added to DjangoCon US, the very first thing I did was to understand the system, how they work, how they communicate. it was a bit different from what we do in Ghana, right? Yeah, so the very first thing I did was to understand the system, the organogram of these communities, how they communicate, how they work, and I later on blended that one with the experience I have back home. Yeah, so that made me adaptable to this community. Because when I started organizing with this community, the time difference, back then I was in Ghana then, so the time difference, I have to skip some classes. Yeah. In the final year, I was doing my project work and other things. So I saw that dedication, that passion to also contribute to this community. So in finding balance, I just understand the system, how they work. Because here I realized there was a strong organization as compared to back home. Because back home, the core team, most of them had traveled to different geographical locations. So that was affecting us. As to, let's say, you have someone in Ghana, someone in Nigeria, someone in Finland, in Germany. They're all devs from Ghana. They are the coordinates. But it ended up that because of work, because of school, they are traveled to other parts of the world. But there was an essence of feeling belonging with one goal of raising the next generation through open source communication. So based on that idea, based on that experience, it's more of, I transferred that one into the current community that I'm in it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So this is more an open question, but you could go.
We also have 2 questions from the...
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Sorry, something Benedict said just like sparked a question in me. So I remember the first DjangoCon US call I hopped on this year, organizers call. I was really impressed with how it was conducted. Like, it was efficient, the notes looked good, and everyone was just on top of whatever their role and responsibility was. And like what you said, I also kind of took some of those lessons back into like when we were organizing PyCon Zim and how we do it. But I also wanted to ask, how do you get to a point where people are so willing to, I guess, engage and take responsibility for whatever role they are involved in without getting paid? Because I think in Zim, and I'm sure a lot of African countries, I think that's something that's a bit tough, where people are kind of like, look, I'm trying to survive. And if you want me to dedicate my time to this and you want me to be my best, it would help if I got paid. But sometimes there's no money for that. So I don't know, do you guys have any thoughts or actual strategies for how you cultivate that? Yeah.
It's a big nope on that one, I guess. We don't have it figured out, in all honesty. When I think about people paying out of pocket to come here, and although like the PSF, DEFNA, there's grants available. DSF put money in our grants as well. Black Python devs got grants as well. I can't say that we have figured it out in a way that people aren't paying a lot of money out of pocket and there's a lot of privilege in it. Getting people who really care, who do like the program and run all those processes, it's just taking time. And we kind of lucked out that we've had some people that have been doing it for 5 and 6 years. And so that process gets a little better. And as they teach the next group of people what they've done, we don't really have a philosophy of we've always done it this way. It's more or less we refine, we move, things change a lot. But it's just really hard for me to not focus on the privilege and think about like, when you come to an event and it's well run, I don't see that, even though I'm a little removed. I see barriers that I'm like, we need to do a better job of making this less of an issue. Like, there's so much money in tech, I wish we did a better job of fundraising that we could pay people to be organizers and to do that. So I didn't even remotely answer your question, I'm sorry, but that's my...
No, yeah.
Anybody have the...
Yeah, I have a few notes on what he said. I think most of the times is like you said, we want to survive, right? We want to just make it through the day. But even when you go into like the different calls, like most of the organizers are like really stable from like really for like international conferences, you'd see that most of the people are like really stable, so they're not really worried about like survival. And I feel like that also takes time to agree to what he said, because we can't get to where they are if we haven't learned how to actually cater to people's needs first, and then figure out how to bring all that together to make it work for as long as we can. And I think once we figure that out, and for people who also care about the community in general, will definitely put in effort, even though it's not so much, but just enough to help the community grow. So yeah, most of them are valid points, but the big thing is time and resources. Yeah, and that grows as the community grows too. So eventually we'll get there, but not right now. Yeah.
Good answer.
I just want to, I mean, this is something I always have trouble with because I'm, you know, I feel like on the one hand, I love the volunteer-driven spirit. On the other hand, I feel like labor should be compensated. So I don't have an answer to your question, but I will say that whenever I can, I try to find out what people's goals are and are there ways I can support that if it's in a non-monetary way, like, is there someone I know who I can introduce you to? Is there like a training that I know about that you don't know about? You know, how can I help, right? And the other thing I'd say is I've given talks on this. I'm really big on appreciation, and just like it's not a substitute for money, obviously, but if you're working with people, a way to help them not be burnt out and to feel dedicated is just making sure that they feel their work is seen, and you know, just saying thank you, saying great job, I saw the way you did that and it was really strong, you know, but it's not a solution.
So maybe in addition, what has really helped me to do that is there's a community in Nairobi that reached out, that they actually had to pay me to organize the event, having seen what I do. So I can say at times it pays, not directly, but in different ways. So just keep on doing. That's why I keep on doing whatever I'm doing for the community. Yeah.
There are questions from the community side too.
Yeah, so I was about to say what Monica said. We have some of the organizations that when you reach out to them, based on your works and experiences, they see you, how you're contributing to other communities and everything, then they end up reaching out to you. So in that way, you can get paid. But I think there should be an education on how we can build careers in open source through contribution. Yeah. But everything boils down to what have you done? Your essence of being in that community, what you're contributing to that community, what makes you stand out, what makes people know you. Based on that, there is a way you can get funds and other things. Yeah. Thank you.
So we have a couple of questions from our live chat. One of them is kind of offline, but I'm gonna like reword it just a little bit because I hope that's what they meant. Actually a great tie on to the last two comments. Can you share a moment where your organizing skills helped you in your professional development? And I mean, I guess for Lauren, maybe not, since it is your job. But yeah, do you have an example of where maybe something that you learned being an organizer kind of paid off in like your job or, you know, your career long term?
I think for me, it boosted my people skills, because when I interact with so many people and I relate it back to work, I'm good with people knowing what they do and study them. And also another thing, it's a career growth for me because apart from doing QA, I'm also involved in social media. So I feel like it's going to take months for my employer to lay me off because there's an impact that I bring to the company. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a consultant, so there's a lot of communication skills. Filling gaps of meetings, I think, like watching talks and having to fill gaps and seeing other people. People who tend to organize, like I really don't care to be up here and I don't care to be on stage, so I don't give conference talks. But everybody else that I organize with love being on stage and they're all really great at it. So you pick up skills, I think, just by watching people who are really good at it and just watching a lot of talks, so.
And then the other question that we had in the chat was, can you share a moment that really made you feel like you belonged to the community, and offer advice on how we can create more of those moments for new or potential members?
recently, when I attended PyCon US, I think after everything I published a blog as to how individuals can come into the US. Because I realized when you talk to devs in Ghana, they lack how the system works here, from visa applications as to how you can even locate a community and everything. So I published a blog, and DjangoCon US tweeted it, and based on, initially I shared this in the group, right? Then within a few minutes, I received more people appreciating the work, as in how deep the thing is. Then I was like, oh, cool. I'm being appreciated here, right? Then they shared it on their platforms. Then people reached out to me. Then out of that, I was able to take them through the system. They got the visa, but here's the case, they got denied. And one got approved. So seeing that results motivates me to do more. Yeah, that's it.
I got a story that, because I'm new to tech. I don't know if anyone else in this room is I'm not a tech person. I don't code. As I like to say, I've got people for that. And so I was new to this. It was my first PyCon. I'd never been to a tech conference. I'd never seen a booth. So I was it was the day before the booths open. I was kind of freaking out, and I was exhausted. I hadn't slept in days, and I was just at the breaking point. And somebody suggested I was about to go, had all the stuff for the PSF booth. I was about to go set it up. And someone just suggested that I ask for help. I don't know. So I just on Twitter was does anyone want to help with the PSF booth right now? And then I went back to eating my lunch, and I didn't even get to finish my lunch because Mario Munoz, Python by Night on his things, and Chris Neugebauer had already showed up, and we're yeah, we're here. What do you want? What help do you need? And then a few other people showed up, and I was oh my God, I love it here. So just the willingness for people to step up and being excited and happy to help is what makes me feel welcome here.
Any more comments before we move on to the next question? Okay. So what advice would you give to leaders who are almost taking up leadership based on succession, and people who've never done leadership before, who are just starting out? What are some of the things that you could share that would help them out?
Mine is just a comment. So I would say learn what's there, and then maybe do research and look at what's missing, and then add to it to make it a success.
Mine would be, especially if it's event focused, just because PyCon or DjangoCon or whatever conference inspired you to start organizing doesn't mean you have to do it. Running a successful event is planning it, people showing up, you getting it done. If you can't have food, or if you can't record, if you can't stream, that is totally fine. You don't have to put that pressure on yourself to be a success.
All right. A big shout out to Don Wages. Don has this topic that she went about delivering at conferences. Until you invent, you imitate. So until you invent, you imitate. Always reach out to people. You've seen devs or people organizing this conference. They have an organization. They have leaders. They have websites. For example, Black Python Devs. If you visit our website, we have all our social platforms, all the means that you can connect to us. You have the passion to start something. You reach out. You ask questions. Then I believe you'll be directed. Then that motivation or that passion that you have will be ignited based on the responses that you get. Then you join hands with people. So you connect with individuals. Then that vision can be materialized or realized. Thank you.
I'd say from what I've seen of community organizing, the number one thing if you want to get into leadership is just showing up consistently. That's if you're trying to decide whether to trust someone with something new, and it's an amazing amount of leadership is just showing up consistently. So if you don't feel like you're qualified, if you can just show up, and be there when people expect you. That genuinely really helps. I would also say, as you move into leadership, something that has really helped me is remembering that asking people for help is often a gift rather than a burden. I think all of us probably have times when someone's asked us to do something and it felt great to be asked, So remembering that doing it all by yourself isn't, don't be a hero, and give people the gift of inviting them in.
Maybe just to add, own what you do and always have a backup plan. Like for a short story, when we had an event last year, somebody was supposed to print the badges. And I'm the one who coordinated her with the guy who was supposed to print them. So we didn't pay, and she didn't mention because I was doing other things. And then on the day of the event, speakers were there. So how we do it in Kenya, we have a registration desk where people, their laptops, you register your name, you pick your badge, you pick a T-shirt, and then get to the event. So everything was set apart from the badge. And we really wanted the speakers to have badges because people are interested to know who's going to speak about what. So there were no badges at that time. Now, I had to quickly print different T-shirts to identify the speakers. So at least you need to have a backup plan in everything. Yeah.
Sometimes 2 backup plans or 3.
Yeah. Are there any questions from... Okay, so this is the end of the session, but I would love to, if you have any parting shots for people and other leaders, that would be great. If you don't, we can just conclude.
Yeah, my parting shot is always be a master in what you do and love it.
My parting shot is if you do sponsorship, use a sponsors at email so that future people can reach you.
After your event, give yourself time to celebrate that. And that can be the people who helped you have it. It's really easy to just focus on having your event and then the event is over and there's this letdown that people naturally go through. But take the time, tell people you appreciate them. It feels good and it feels like it's just really hard to come up with like how these things end because you've spent a year or sometimes more planning something out. So, yeah.
All right. There's an essence of belonging, and that's why we have communities all around. And it's open source. It's open to everyone. So come and stay and learn. Because throughout this process, you get to learn, unlearn, and relearn in your individual journeys. Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much to our panelists.
All right, so we're actually going to flip something. Y'all are good. We're going to flip something in the schedule. Mostly because of our amazing participants who've been watching online. I do live streaming regularly, and one of the things that has been so amazing for me is that it's been consistent. Folks have been like watching, and they've watched the entire day through live streaming and some other things. So I'm just thoroughly impressed with them. They can hear you. Can y'all just give a hand clap for the people who've been participating online as well? So before we wrap up, we're gonna skip over and go to, where's the afternoon session?
It's on the other side.
It's on the other one? Oh, I just gotta like click through it. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. We've got, hold on. Photo op. Oh, okay. One, I do want to give another special round of applause. This is like the wrap up before the actual wrap up because I got to shut the stream down at some point for the next thing that we're going to do. So let's give all of our speakers a hand for both the morning and the afternoon as well, and our panelists and all those other things.
And our attendees.
What's that?
And attendees too.
They can't hear you anyway. Yes, so our attendees, thank you for showing up, our in-person attendees. Most of y'all flew in early to another event. Some of y'all specifically flew in early, changed your plans, and just to attend this. So like, I can't say thank you enough for that. That means so much to us. I'm going to give a special shout out to Velda, who pushed me to finally say, okay, let's just do what we called this hashtag the bad version, and I feel like that's just wrong. Like, it was the first version. And we knew that, like, sure, we would be missing things, sure, we wouldn't have, a massive audience. Honestly, our audience, both online and in person, exceeded our expectations. So, like, thank you so much for making that a reality. But also, Velda, as always, thank you so much for believing in the half-brained idea that I have. Like, hey, we should do a leadership summit. That sounds like fun. And Velda's like, what's wrong with you? But also, yes, I think we could make that happen. This has been the Leadership Summit for 2024. One of the things that we talked about specifically was we want to do these at least annually. And we're a global community. We represent a global community. So we want to make sure that we have a global leadership summit every year. So I'm happy to announce that next year, our leadership summit, at least for the fall, will be held somewhere. For those who know geography, we left you a hint, somewhere in Africa. And I just want to give a shout out to the folks that are watching live from Africa. All of our online mods are either from Africa or Europe. And they volunteered and they signed up because they wish they were, like, they wanted to be here. And we wanted to get them here, but unfortunately, that's just not how our organization works. We don't have fast travel stuff yet. But our operating plan for the future is to rotate between North America, South America, Africa, and Europe. So that I can't give any hints to where 26 and 27 will be. But if you do the math of where we are and where we've been, you could probably figure out where we're going next. So with that being said, we're going to do our breakout sessions, which I will explain the rules to that as soon as I walk over there and shut down the stream. Or Velda, if you want to do it, just hit the button that says finish on it. I think it just says finish. You have to move the mouse over to that side.
Where?
Yeah.
Okay. Muted.
This is where I should have delegated someone else to run to do all the stream stuff.
And broadcast?
Yes.